couple weeks ago, we held a big rally down at City Hall demanding that the mayor and the city council step up, take responsibility for the funding crisis around our schools. They had failed to fight for revenue, failed to support us and speak out in demanding progressive revenue at the state level, making sure that the wealthy pay their share, making sure that these banks stop profiting at our expense so that our schools could be properly funded, so that students wouldn't have to face more cuts, so that teachers wouldn't be forced further out of the system, and so that our state could come up from its bottom of the nation status in education funding. They've been silent on these questions, so we demanded that they step up and take some responsibility. Since then, the state did take some action. They passed a temporary budget, a stopgap measures for funding public education. The schools will open in the fall, but it's only a fraction of what the school district itself has said that it needs for this year. For all of their public, little spats back and forth, the mayor and the governor, they've been in absolute lockstep that neither of them have, called for 1 penny in new revenue and 1 penny of progressive revenue to fund public education in this state. This, temporary solution isn't going to do one thing to change our state's status on really raising us up on properly funding public education. It's not going to fix CPS's budget gap for this year. It's only going to stave off a few of the worst possibilities, but the mayor's been clear that he intends to deal with the rest of their budget hole by cutting from educators and cutting from students.
And please proceed in whatever order you would like, and announce who you are and where you're from the record, and then begin your testimony. Thank you.
There's been a number of legislative hearings recently. The House Finance and Revenue Committee have begun holding hearings investigating this question of the toxic interest rate swaps and other financial deals, the costs of the state that these banks have been taking, the toll and threat of further payments that are down the road.
Public issuers have valid claims, probably have valid claims, under Illinois law against the underwater banks for what the banks told issuers about the risk of the transactions, and more important, what the banks left unsaid. Under Illinois law, as is true in most states, when a person has a legal duty to make disclosures, to disclose certain information, the failure to disclose that information constitutes fraudulent concealment. For instance, Illinois law requires real estate brokers to make certain disclosures to home buyers. You cannot, if you're a home buyer, you cannot sue a realtor for telling you that a plug ugly house has great curb appeal. But if they don't tell you that the basement floods when it rains hard, you can sue them. And then, in fact, that's the reason I use that example is the leading Illinois case was a basement flooding. There is a similar legal requirement for disclosure under federal law for public finance. Congress amended the securities law in the 1970s to create the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board to create rules for public finance that would protect investors, but also for market integrity.
A number of financial experts from both Chicago and around the country have come in to speak to them around these issues and really highlight not just the real moral and social crisis, the social service cuts, the education cuts, the layoffs and loss of good jobs that are coming directly as a result of bank profiteering, but also laying out some of the legal and financial arguments of how these deals really were illegitimate, that there really was fraud involved, that there really are conflicts of interest, and that there really are methods by which the state could fight back here, that they could take action, that they can win back some of this money, that they can push back on the banks, that they can keep these things from continuing to happen.
And so a banker comes knocking, in some cases, like CPS got $43 million in upfront cash as part of their deal. And so that's money they can use right now. And it's a way to say, hey, you can save some money right now, you take on some risk in the long term, but you don't have to worry about it. And the thing is that this isn't the only such deal that the city of Chicago or CPS did. They also did these capital appreciation bonds, where basically they've been compared to payday loans by the California Treasurer, because you don't have to pay anything back right now, but after 30 years, you have to pay back everything with interest, and interest compounded the entire time. So in some cases, like the city of Chicago has bonds where they'll pay 6 times the principal and interest because but the city did it because it helped them meet their cash crunch right now. So we really need revenue solutions.
In a bread and butter world of people that do borrowing and sometimes have to get a loan, and you look at the spectrum of investing, hedging, speculating, trading, and now we're all the way into this realm of gambling. Will this coin be heads or will it be tail? And this is essentially what we're paying for, a bet. Was this going to be a head or a tail? This is so far away from their business of having collected tax revenue and having put it into education that these firms, I am contending, do not have the right to even offer this product to this institution, because these are professional gamblers, people that can use these products, and they preyed upon the teachers and the students and those that were managing the teachers and the students' work. What could have been done different? Of course, the city of Chicago does not have an elected school board. Many of these representatives aren't held necessarily accountable to people in the community. And so other persons that would have had this expertise, that had some level of accountability, would have come forward and said, no, you cannot do that. This is the only district in the entire state that does not have an elected school board. And so although we take full responsibility for it, this is at the source of the problem. So I would say it's ego that got in the way of someone that thought they were more sophisticated than they are. And it's like someone that bought something they could not afford, and they've made a terrible mistake. And so the city of Chicago bought something they could not afford.
Okay.
It needs to have some fairness.
The Board of Education, the mayor's office, both insist that there's nothing they can do about these swaps. They say that but we know that that is not true. We know that actually we've presented them over and over again with lots of different angles that they can take to try to get this money back. They claim there's no basis to sue the banks, even though we know, for instance, that the banks have admitted to manipulating the interest rates that the swaps were based on. And so the banks, the mayor has really gone out of his way to close the door on any chance of either the city or the state getting this money back. He's actually gone out of his way, his administration has gone out of its way to sign away the right to sue the banks and to close the deals out and pay huge termination fees voluntarily. What we're seeing now is that we've seen press reports that the governor also is looking to hire lawyers so he can pay out these termination fees, or so he can terminate the swaps, presumably pay the fees. The mayor has set the wrong example here, because he's basically guaranteed by paying these termination fees that the banks get all of their future profits. And he's given them a free pass, get out of jail free card, saying that there's no way we can come after them for the money. We need to make sure that the governor doesn't do the same thing. And we know that the two of them are birds of a feather, so it's likely that they'll try to do the same thing. And we need to make sure that does not happen.
Over the course of the last few months, we've had multiple budget hearings in the state legislature looking into the issue of interest rate swaps and ways in which banks broke the law in order to self-estate those deals. We have petitions with signatures from 88,000 people across the country that are calling on the S.E.C. to hold the banks accountable, that are costing our city, our state, our school districts across the country billions of dollars every year because of bad financial deals. What we're here today to do is to call on the S.E.C. to take the next logical step and actually take the logical findings of its own investigations to take action on behalf of cities, states, and school districts to recover money for us. And really, it's not that hard for the S.E.C. to find bad swap actors. They're literally all over the place. BMO Harris right there, Bank of America over there, Loop Capital just a block down, JP Morgan Chase about 3 blocks down. All of these are in the S.E.C.'s own neighborhood, and these are all banks that have stolen money from taxpayers. And the thing is that these interest rate swaps, these toxic swaps, they have real consequences for real people across the country. In southeastern Michigan, we had swaps leading to bad swap deals. The swap penalties are the reason why you had water bills double, and that led to water shutoffs in Detroit and water poisoning in Flint.
Good morning, my name is Kimberly Johnson, and I'm a paraprofessional at METO Math and Science Academy. A lot of schools from the South and a lot of schools from the West, our black and brown children, did not get an opportunity to stay open. So to our mayor, whose bankers and his best friends in his pocket, we need you. To our governor, we need you. S.E.C., we need you. Because the only reason I would feel like the mayor would even lift up a finger if something happened to that beam over there, I can promise you this, $2 to $3 million would shut down downtown, and he would have it just like that. So, with that being said, We are here and we're standing with the fight. S.E.C, we need you.
You know, the city of Chicago and our Chicago public schools have paid out over $1 billion, that's billion with a B, in payments to the big banks over these toxic swap agreements. Additionally, to terminate these bad deals that were sold to us on a false premise and on lies, we had to pay a ransom to the banks of over $600 million between the public schools and the city of Chicago. That's $600 million that should have been spent to improve our schools. That's $600 million that should have been spent to fix potholes in our neighborhoods, to build infrastructures, to open up mental health clinics, to create jobs. But instead, that $600 million in ransom to the banks went to go pad their bottom line.
Our leaders in this city are choosing to take money from Sesame Street and give it to Wall Street. We have to stand up to that.
This is not a debt that we owe in terms of money that we borrowed. This was a side bet. We gambled. Our political leaders sat down with the banks and said, I'll bet you that I have better financial sense than you do. Well, let's think about that. Really? Would you step into the ring with Mike Tyson and bet that you were going to knock him out? Would you arm wrestle The Rock and suggest that you were going to pin him? Okay? How did our elected leaders make this kind of bet with the banks that you must have known they were going to lose?
The state of Illinois is cutting life-saving programs such as ceasefire, LIHEAP, senior home care. This last weekend alone in Chicago, we had 64 shootings. 64 shootings. How many shootings could funding of vital anti-violence and social services have prevented? The total amount that swaps will cost the state of Illinois is more than $1.4 billion. Why are these contracts being honored versus contracts with communities, which in the case of ceasefire serve predominantly communities of color? We have been operating without a fully funded state budget. We need to question the legality of these bank contracts. If it's legal for our communities to function without a fully funded state budget, communities who had legitimate contracts with the state, then we should stop any and all payouts to the banks on these toxic swap deals.
That's right.
So we are asking for two things. One, that the S.E.C open investigation as to the legality of these contracts with the banks, including the risks that were involved. And two, we are asking Governor Rauner not to pay out these swap deals. He should be standing with us. He should not pay a single dollar more of our taxpayer money to these banks.
Great, so we can take these petitions and head on upstairs. Thank you.
We got 8 per elevator. I think it's okay to have them out. And here's the letter. We'd like to, we're representatives of various organizations here in the city. These signatures come from all over the country, and we'd like to set up a meeting with the regional director. So how do we go about doing that?
I can give you our phone number. You can call back and schedule an appointment with his assistant.
Is that strong?
What's your name? My name is Bernie.
Bernie,
yes.
You know, it's so important that we put books before the banks. And we're really hoping the S.E.C will take these 80,000 signatures seriously.
Okay.
And investigate these banks.
Because unfortunately our levels of government have failed to protect our need over corporate greed.
I think it remains to be seen what the legislators are going to do with all of this. I was encouraged at the hearings that some of them were asking good and critical questions and trying to think through the implications of some of this, that they were asking questions about what actual steps they could take. I'm encouraged that a couple of legislators joined us here at a rally today to deliver petitions to the Securities and Exchange Commission, calling on them to begin investigations of the toxic swap deals and bank activities. But it's not going to be enough for them to just show up at the rallies. They're going to have to do like we've done and actually take on some risks around this. They're going to have to go beyond making public statements and rhetoric, just like we've had to, and take action around these issues. Take action within the legislature. Take action to put pressure on the governor and the mayor. Take action to push for legal action by the state against the banks. Take action to put themselves out on a limb here, really trying to put the pressure on these banks, these Wall Street operators, the big investors, the big corporate interests of the state. They need to take action to put the pressure on them and do what's right and meet our needs.